Hello everyone, my name is Tyler from Howling Adventures and this shall be my very first video. Cutting to the chase, the number I came up with is around 40 or 42, accounting for variance. This is taken with the idea you're having a constant back and forth fight, while a level 1 Arak or Kra archer can technically solo a Tarrasque given the right materials and the right amount of time. It's not a very interesting conclusion to make. So this conclusion is bred from the idea the combatants will stand relatively close to each other, and then, given enough time, a winner will be had. If all you came to this video was for this conclusion, I'm glad you came, and I was able to inform. If you're interested in how these conclusions are formed, feel free to continue watching the video. For me, this has been a personal project I've been working on and off for about 2 years now, since roughly August of 2020, I believe. What I consider to be the best build I've shipped out a lot over this time. Not only has there been new source books, just general opinion and ideas that I thought would be impractical turned out to be practical. Um, but coming up with a best build, it's important to look at the Tarrasque itself, to capitalize on any weaknesses it possesses and know what strengths it has. The Tarrasque bolsters good defenses. It should. It's a CR30 creature. Looking at saving throws, they're all pretty good except for a knowable +0 to dexterity saves. It also possesses magic resistance, granting it advantage on saving throws against magical effects, and free legendary resistances, which let automatically succeed free saving throws. This is important to note. The dexterity save. It is important to know you can't use dexterity saves that have fire, as it has immunity to fire, so it limits down the options, but it's still very relevant to the builds to come up. Martial builds are a bit harder to come by. With an AC of 25, without a specialized build, the only way of hitting is through a critical hit. This critical hit also needs to be from a magical weapon, which is not given for a level 1 character. The chances of landing a critical hit are also very much threatened by the rightful presence of the Trask, changing a 5% chance on a normal hit of 1 in 20 to a 1 in 400, or a 0.025% chance with disadvantage. This dramatically affects the damage, as you can imagine. When looking at the Trask attacks, there are only 3 real takeaways you need to take away from them. For a level 1 character, generally the only way the Trask hit is going to miss. The only way it's going to miss is for a natural 1. The minimum damage is generally enough to knock unconscious, if not kill a level 1 character. And lastly, the Trask doesn't have any form of AoE. This is something unique to the Trask as far as high CR creatures go, and it's one of the reasons why the number of level 1 characters is so low, and it's plausible as it can only take out at maximum 8 characters each round. But considering the natural ones, it's more like 7.6 characters each round. Not considering the ability to tank, because that's a very specialized build in its own right for a level 1 character. The best build may come as a shock to you, as it was I. It mixes some martial and some caster through using a warlock martial and a cleric caster. There's so many barriers to go through to use a martial character, but it ends up edging over full caster builds. By completely focusing on critical hits, you can deal a whopping 29 points of damage on a critical hit. This outpaces any other damage I can compete with for most amount of damage. This is of course kind of inconsistent damage because you're going critical hit on 20, unless you're taking Headsplit, in which case you can critical hit on 19 at level 1. You get the 29 points of damage by taking the Great Weapon Master feat, which is how this entire build really comes into focus. By taking a -5 to hit, which doesn't matter if you're only able to hit through a critical hit, you get a 10 more points of damage. With a 2d12 from your Great Axe on a critical hit, averaging 13, 10 from Great Weapon Master, 3 from Charisma from being a Hexblade, and 2 from Hexblade's Curse. And finally, +1 from having a +1 weapon from Force Cleric, you average 29 points of damage when hit. With taking Hexblade, you crit on 19, so that leaves a 10% chance, or if you have advantage through flanking or having a single of the new kobold in your party, it turns it into a 19% chance to crit. With Armor of Agathis cast before the combat, you gain an additional 5 points of cold damage on turn 1. A Hexblade with these conditions on turn 1 will deal 5.51 damage, plus 5 on turn 1, doing 10.51. On turn 2, the damage increases to 6.56, as the bonus action provided by Great Weapon Master is important in this build. Even though you need to hit 2 crits in a row, it still adds about 1 damage, which is a lot when you're only doing 5.51 damage in a turn. These numbers do add up over time. It adds to a significant damage, comparably. This is only made possible by having access to a magic weapon. Cleric, and more particular, Forged Domain Cleric, is the only subclass to my knowledge that allows you to have a +1 weapon at level 1, allowing the martial characters to be able to hit. Cleric has a lot of utility also with having Sacred Flame, which is the best damage cantrip for a level 1 character against a Tarrasque. It being a dexterity save against that also does radiant instead of fire damage for a d8 is very impactful, doing the most amount of damage any cantrip can do at 1.62 on average, from the 4.5, and it hitting roughly 36% of the time. This 36% is calculated from having a DC 13, which is the highest a level 1 caster can have, while the Trask has a +0 and advantage on the save. Taking Magic Initiate for Catapult, which is the highest consistent damage, the highest damage being Armor of Agathis, which is what the Hexblade Warlock is using, but Catapult does 4.86 damage, 3 times Sacred Flame, dealing magical bludgeoning damage, gives you the Cleric a consistent damage source that it previously didn't have in its base class against the Tarrasque. Something to note, Frighten really hurts the damage of the martial characters, as said, the 1 in 20 becomes a 1 in 400. It's not as drastic with a 19 and advantage already. Turns a 19 into a 10, but still a reduction in damage. To reduce it, you have the Clerics cast Resistance, which is also a very useful cantrip that not as many casters have access to. This adds a d4 to the Wisdom save from Frightening. With these precautions, having a Warlock with a 14 in Wisdom and a d4 on that save, 57.5% will still be frightened, but that is okay. That's only really felt in round 2. It is not felt in round 1 or 3 as much, as the martial characters are going to be the first ones dying inside of the combat due to their proximity. To be fully transparent, there's a lot of math going on behind the scenes. I am completely sure there's a better build or a small but more precise way of having a maximizer build. My inclination is having one of the clerics or having some amount of bards in the party to negate the frightful presence, to not be as impactful. That would be my natural inclination of a way to improve the build. I have spent a lot of time doing research on this type of thing, and I simply want to put the ideas out there. If you find any errors with what I have posted or any alternative ideas, please feel free to contact me through either the comments or just writing at me, or do as you will. I love this kind of thing. I'll happily converse with anyone who finds it equally as interesting. If anyone has a different fight they would like to see, feel free to ask. The only one I'm pondering is how many of, I believe, level 4 or 5 characters it would take to kill a Tiamat, which is a way bigger task than the Tarrasque, just because of how much AoE that Tiamat has, comparatively. But I still think it'd be a very interesting thing to find out. This has been my video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like this kind of content, feel free to comment or do the subscribe thingy. Do as you will. Have a nice day, and thank you everyone for listening. It means a lot.